All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of GIS Success webinar. We are on episode number 17, Implementing GIS, City versus County. I'm your host, Toby Soto of GISSuccess.com, your resource to career-changing content focused on GIS leadership and management. And today's episode is brought to you by GIS Success Network.com. Hey, in that first masterclass, which is the position level for the 5 levels of GIS leadership series, has been posted to the masterclass library, so you can access that anytime once you join. And the second masterclass, which is the permission level, is scheduled for a live webinar on November 20th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So if you want to join us, hop on over there, join us up, and we'll have the live event, and we'll record that and put it in the library for future reference. Anyways, this is going to be our last show. Not forever, just for the year. Just for the year. We're going to go dark until January, and I'm thinking of doing a December digital detox. Yes, and focus on the family. Especially through the holidays, and I want you guys to be able to spend time with them as well. So a huge thank you for showing up.
With your family?
Yeah, everyone come on over. We'll do a big webinar. We'll put cameras up. Anyway, a huge thank you for everyone that showed up. We had a lot of registrants, and thank you for taking time out of your day. You know, you guys keep showing up, we'll keep producing episodes, and we already have a couple of them, a couple of good ideas for 2020. So, you know, we're putting them together and lining them up for next year. And we had a great year this year. We just had some great guests. I mean, we've just really been knocking it out. For those of you that are watching the YouTube replay, make sure you subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell so that you get reminded of videos that have been uploaded to the channel. And for the live audience, please post your comments and your chats into the chat window, and make sure you have it set to all panelists and attendees so that everybody can see your chat. So now, before we introduce our special guest that we have today, I like to kind of do this little thing where everyone that's attending, please in chat, put what are you working on now? And if you feel comfortable enough, put your email address. This is a great resource that we've kind of provided to the community where you put down what you're working on right now, and it sparks interest by someone else, and you can start collaborating and you know, maybe start developing best practices and finding out the best way to do things, or maybe you have questions or concerns, and you know, Jane over here is working on that. Let's find out what she's dealing with. So it's been a great resource, and we pop that up into our Slack group as well. So that way it's a forever living reference. So I'm gonna ask my colleagues. Tim, what are you working on right now?
I am working on a passion project right now.
Ooh.
I'm going to show you a little bit of a picture. So last month, our GIS internship program turned 25.
Wow.
And so I'm doing a where are they now? So this is kind of a quick run through of a list of the people we've had. We've had 37 different interns. We've been able to hire 4 of them full-time here. And Aldo, right, we even have a connection because our first intern that ever worked at Collin County launched the GIS program at Denton County.
Oh, wow.
So it's really been fun to kind of do a where are they now. It's been a delight to reach out and talk to some folks that I haven't talked to in many years. And so so just stay tuned. I'm going to put together some visualizations, maybe a story map, operational dashboard, things like that. So just take advantage of the entire suite, but it'll all be wrapped around these interns, and I could not be happier to work on this project.
Oh, that is really cool. That is really cool. How about you, Wade? What's going on?
Well, I am working with some of the colleagues that I have here at the Utah DNR, and we are striving to come up with the next generation GIS ROI report, and it's kind of the 2.0 version. we've thought quite a bit about its benefits and its limitations as an Excel spreadsheet. So we're looking to move off that platform and convert it into something more user-friendly. So that's what we're currently working on.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. I see a presentation coming up on that one.
Maybe a masterclass.
Ooh, there we go. So we have a couple of guests with us today, and the topic at hand is the GIS implementation, city versus county. And we have Brandi Rank from the City of Thornton, Colorado. And we have Aldo Aviña from Denton County. And just a little background on Brandi, 18 years of experience, GIS, and as a certified project management professional. You're coming up on your 2-year anniversary there at the city. That's awesome. You're obsessed with innovating new and creative ways of applying technology. And you recently presented at the Ezra UC, right?
Did, yeah.
GIS Manager Summit. So welcome to the show. And we just found out this is your 3rd time.
Yeah.
A three-peat.
She's a veteran, seasoned veteran. We also have Aldo, GIS Manager for the County of Denton, Texas. 13 years GIS experience, bachelor's and master's in geography from the University of North Texas. Came to Denton back in December of 2010 as a GIS technician. And so you quickly rose through the ranks there, and you're now the GIS manager, and you're also an adjunct faculty for the University of North Texas and teaching intro to GIS. That's awesome. Man, well, welcome you guys. Thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate this. And I just want to give a quick kudos to Wade for this topic and the format. This is something kind of new that we're doing. And I think it's going to produce some interesting results out of what we get out of this. But as just a little precursor here, there are some main key areas that are important to really have a successful GIS in your organization. And some of those key areas have to be like your division structure, your governance, your funding, your staffing, your training, there's project management. There's also communication. And, all those elements are important in having that successful GIS implementation. But all those elements are different for everybody. Every organization is different. And that's what creates these unique challenges that we're faced against. And so we wanted to take a look under the hood, under 2 organizations, one that's kind of a small, medium, and then also a large, to kind of tease out some of these perspectives and, the thought process in the GIS implementation and operations of the program. So that's kind of how we're kind of looking at this. It isn't like, county versus city, who's better, who's doing the best, it's not that way. This is more of just a perspective that you can see, side by side. And Wade's got some great slides that we're going to view, and he's going to, kind of go through some of the demographic information, and then we'll just kind of like dive into some of these topical questions that are important to having a successful GIS, and we'll tease out some of that information. So why don't you hit it there, Wade?
Okay, so I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, you guys can see all of that?
Yeah.
Great.
Very good.
Okay, then let me get rid of these guys. Tim and Toby, you're in charge of dealing with chat.
Got it.
Okay.
I'm on it.
Yeah, we were excited about this opportunity, again, to call out differences. Quite honestly, we didn't know what the differences are going to be. We just thought it might be interesting to compare and contrast. And as Toby said, there are no right or wrong answers. We're just hoping that the audience can perceive, maybe from their own perspective, maybe they fit into one of these categories, or maybe they are too just interested in noting how the approach to GIS might be similar or different. So with that, let me talk a little bit about these slides. The idea is that there were a set of pre-webinar questions that we threw out to Brandi and Aldo so that we could have their independent perspectives on those. In other words, kind of unfiltered, uninfluenced by anybody. These were answered ahead of time. And then what we'll do is we'll also interject a few open questions that they will answer in front of everybody. And these are questions that we provided to them in advance so they could at least prepare their response. All right, so this is kind of the structure of what we're going to go through right now. Provided I can move this through. There you go. All right, so here are some of the basics. This is kind of setting the stage for the unique differences between Brandi and Aldo's organizations. So we'll start with a population comparison, 860 to 140,000. So roughly the county has 6 times as many people as Brandi does there in her city. In terms of the physical size of these two municipalities, again, we're looking at a huge difference, 25 times the area in Denton County. And that's not too unexpected, as counties are generally much larger than the cities within them. In terms of population, or I'm sorry, the number of parcels, again, we're looking at about 6 times the number of parcels in the county compared to the city. We were also interested to figure out where exactly GIS lives within the organization. And so here is a bit of a distinction. I used to work for a city as well, and it wasn't too far stretched from what Brandi's reality was, as I was based in community development. I think a lot of programs tend to start there for the planning reasons, sometimes in public works. But in this case, Brandi is within her city development department, and Aldo, his program resides within IT. We were asking questions about where do they get their funds from? The idea that there could be, you know, multiple departments that contribute to a GIS-oriented fund, or were they generally just included as part of a general fund, as part of a typical department based budget? That seemed to be the similarity between these two organizations, as they are both funded from general fund. And they both consider themselves to be enterprise GIS perceived, and there could be nuances to this, and we'll see if we can't derive a little bit of their perspective on that. And then the last thing on this slide is we wanted to ask about the structure of their staff. How many people are we talking about? And while there are some terminology differences, the interesting thing for all of the size of the organization differences, their staffs are basically the same. And this was kind of an interesting distinction here, is that we've got a GIS manager, we've got analysts, we have some computer technicians or developers, and they were also able to leverage other departments to fund GIS-oriented positions. And this is going to be a key feature that we hope to expand on a little bit further. Are there any key distinctions here that either Brandi or Aldo would like to highlight, or something that didn't get called up here as a distinguishing characteristic about your organization? So if you could just spend a minute apiece on anything that I might have missed or things you want to highlight.
Sure, I'll go. I think that an interesting part, obviously this was a summary, but one of the GIS staff positions in infrastructure is completely funded by an enterprise fund for stormwater. So that was a really, really nice way for them to make an argument for a new FTE, which was really important to them. So I would definitely, you know, think about funding sources and you can be creative. So that would probably, yeah.
That's a good point. So as a, was it stormwater, did you say?
Stormwater utility, yeah.
Yeah, so here you got a utility that collects fees.
Yep.
So they have a revenue source that's separate from general fund, and an opportunity to say, hey, you clearly have a need. Why don't you pay for a person to be a point person? That's a good opportunity to take advantage of.
Yep.
How about you, Aldo?
Yeah, I want to point out that Brandi's got a GIS developer. Well, we do not. We have our own department that does development in variety of different languages, and we have to communicate to them in GIS language, and we have to understand what they're saying from their development language and try to come to the same goal. It's also part of the department's philosophy, or tech services department, to, if there's any coding needed that app dev can't handle, or application development team can't handle, or we can't handle, outside of simple Python or some JavaScript, then we can outsource that. And that keeps costs down for short-term projects.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that distinction, folks. That's good. Okay. Another question that we had asked prior was the percentage of organizational departments that are not yet GIS users. So for this one, I thought I would just kind of break it out individually first. So Aldo identified about 60% of the county departments are not classified by him as being current users of GIS. Is there any more specifics that you'd like to add to that, Aldo?
Yeah, I mean, there's about 42 to 48 departments. I lost count of them. So there's a lot of departments that are smaller, or larger entities like the tax office that don't necessarily have a need for GIS, that they do their own, they have got their own data management system going.
Not spatially enabled though?
Correct, not spatially enabled.
Okay, that's called opportunity, right?
Exactly.
When you have bandwidth to address it, I can appreciate that. Okay, so Brandi, you identified that about 8% of your departments do not use GIS. So what kind of distinction can you make there with that?
Well, I mean, that represents one department, and that is HR. And I would say that if they had a need for GIS, they would probably reach out to us, whereas the majority of our clients are users of GIS. They use our apps that we provide. So we keep track of how many people are using apps and what apps, and sales tax is actually one of our biggest, most reliable. And they're not the biggest, but they are consistently using our data. So there's probably more opportunity, but we're really kind of delivering that base level that people are expecting.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think it's important not to read too much into these numbers, because there's a lot of nuance with the degrees of GIS use at any department level. We could be talking about the difference between, enabling, the tax commission oriented solution, how much that needs to be integrated with existing systems, as compared to creating something, let's say for Park and Rec as a park finder. And we can deploy that fairly simple and kind of say, yeah, they use our technology, they use GIS, we help them do things. So there's lots of nuance there. It's not right or wrong or good or bad, these numbers, but I do think it's an interesting distinction, because Aldo called out 48 departments. How many departments total do you think you have there in your city, Brandi?
I want to say there was 14 or 17. I remember.
Okay. So quite a different organization purpose, of course. We know the difference between counties and cities. There's a lot more responsibilities at the county level. Okay, so the next question was, can you identify your top 3 challenges for implementing GIS? So we'll start with Brandi this time. These were her responses. How can you want to elaborate a little bit more for just a few minutes apiece, or a few minutes on all of these?
Sure. So I think probably a lot of people can relate to these. Time, I think, is obvious. We have a list of projects, and we need to figure out how long they're going to take and what becomes priority and what doesn't. Resources, I guess, time is a resource, but there's also how much work can a person do. And, you really have to think about time and resources, not how long does it take to build an app, or how long does it take to edit parcels, but how long does it take you to make connections? How long, how many meetings are you going to have? What is the good, do you have a good relationship with people? So how quickly can you get up to speed with someone? All the communication and all that stuff that comes along with project management. Sometimes I think we think about those GIS tasks, but that's just part of it. And then city culture. Culturally, there are definitely some challenges I've run into. We've always done it this way is a big one, and you know, figuring out how to change or communicate, you know, talk about how I might perceive things to be different. Some of it is we need to do some process mapping and some process evaluation. And some groups aren't open to that. There's some people who want to come to GIS and say, this is what I want, this is how, or this is what I want you to do, this is how I want it done, and let me know when you're done. And then there's other people that understand it's a conversation, it's iterative, you know, these are kind of like potentially long-term projects, or, I mean, just merely talk to the GIS foe first and let us help you because we're the experts on that. You know, coming to us and just saying, do this and do that isn't really necessarily great for the organization. So it's kind of what I was thinking of when I wrote those.
Hey, Brandi, you mentioned something earlier about stormwater. I got a question from Ravi about, could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Did you mention something earlier?
So I don't know what he wants me to elaborate on. So essentially the city collects money. It's a utility for stormwater. People in Colorado like to call it the rain tax. And we take the money from that fund, which is separate from your water bill, or it's a part of your water bill. And that money goes into its own enterprise fund. Engineer or infrastructure is going to do projects, you know, new channels, new pipes, whatever they need to do for stormwater management. And a huge part of their system will be, of course, be to keep up all their assets. So they were able to justify and really show we can have one full-time GIS person to manage all of our stormwater assets, help us get mobile, you know, manage the asset management system, all that. So that person is funded out of that project, and they will only be working on projects related to stormwater. So I hope that helps.
I think the key distinction there was be aware that there are enterprise programs within municipal governments that have the opportunity to collect money outside of general property taxes, which is where your general funds come from. So whether it be a water utility, a power utility, stormwater, as in Brandi's case, sanitation districts, these are all opportunities that they have their own operational fund. So shouldn't GIS be considered in part of an operation that could be funded outside of a typical general funded GIS program? So thanks for that clarification, Brandi. All right, well, let's take a look at Aldo's responses to his top 3 GIS challenges. Do you have a few that you'd like to elaborate on, Aldo?
Yeah, so like those first 2 points, it kind of go hand in hand. You know, as we're trying to expand GIS into other departments, you know, having 48 departments, that's a lot of different knowledge areas, not just in the general knowledge of, hey, what does economic development do, but specific, you know, topics in there. If we were trying to build like an application, for example, for our road development, for fixing potholes and gravel and asphalt, you know, we can make a map that shows the roads, but beyond that, you know, what else do they need to know? And so we don't know what questions to ask at the beginning. And so we have to, that's the big challenge is coming to them, speaking their language and being able to explain to them, hey, this is what GIS does. You don't need all of it. Just tell me what you've got going on, and let's see how we can implement GIS and just as part of a COG, because GIS isn't the end all be all and be all. It's just a tool for you. And it's just one little thing that you spend 5 minutes on a daily basis in the middle of all the other duties that you've got.
That's great. I think that we all can relate probably between that challenge of we have department subject matter experts that vaguely understand GIS. And then you've got GIS professionals that know the technology, but they vaguely understand the department's functions and problems and challenges, and probably could learn about an organization's goals if they define them. But that is a disconnect, not probably just within a county, But as Brandi explained, sometimes that culture is just the openness to involve others, to expose things that probably don't work optimally. How many people want to sign up to admit that they're not as optimal as they could be? But one thing to keep in mind is that when GIS approaches these groups, you're not attacking the people and their abilities or inabilities. You're trying to address the systems in which they work. They don't have to take ownership of the system. They probably inherited it. All right, let's move on.
Wait, I just want to say one thing about that.
Sure.
Yeah, you're saying we're not attacking, and I obviously agree with that. But the other thing that people do, which is also really annoying, is going in acting like they know everything. So you need to respect the fact that you have no idea what they do, and you need to acknowledge that you don't, and ask them questions. And that's how you learn. You don't go in saying, I know what you need, here's a solution, blah, 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 I'm so smart.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a great point. I'm going to turn this question to put in context over to Tim, and I'm going to do my best to hunt and peck and write down the responses that I hear Brandi and Aldo give. So I'll turn it over to Tim to ask this question.
All right, thank you, Wade. Yeah, I notice, you know, in your bios as we, and your demographics that Brandi, you're kind of from a city community development area, and Aldo, you're in IT. So what are the barriers that you're experiencing that's limiting your GIS become more effective? You know, yeah, I'll just keep it there and let Wade take the notes and see what you guys have to say about it.
And just one thing to keep in mind is we're interested in an internal perspective of challenges or barriers. So your own internal operations, not outside forces like funding or something like that, but internally your GIS process. Is there anything that you can call out as a barrier? Let's go ahead and start with Brandi.
Thanks. A barrier. Communication. I don't know if that's really getting at the heart of what you're asking me, but
Within your own team?
oh, internally.
Yep.
So for me, it would be something I've worked on really, really, really hard is to grow the talent in my team to, and it's kind of back to what we were talking about. I know a lot of the business needs and the business processes for city development, and I don't feel that a lot of the people on my team do. So, and I don't think they should. So my job as the manager is to help them understand why it's important, involve them in meetings. Before I got here, I heard, we've never seen GIS people in a meeting before. And so really show that being a part of the team is really important, stressing that we don't ask our customers to learn our language, we learn their language. Really making sure customer service is a focus and understand, you know, that's why we're here. We are customer service providers. We're not doing GIS for us. We're doing GIS for a business need. And then, you know, I try really hard to make sure that my team knows about the overall priorities of the city. They don't know what those are. And I think that's my job to do that. So those were big barriers that I found when I got here. I think that change and innovation is difficult for people. So kind of explaining the why, getting through to what the new idea is, and then having your employees buy in. That was a barrier for me for a little while.
Okay, and I went ahead and added balanced workloads because in a previous statement that you said, you know, we all have a lot of work to do. And so I can only imagine that ensuring that that work in process is distributed fairly equally and that everybody is working on just the right amount of projects to be optimized.
Oh yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, I don't think it's a barrier or a challenge. It just, that's part of what I do. It is what it is. But making sure that you don't give the same people the same projects all the time. So for me, it's the balancing is to say, make sure that I'm spreading out the knowledge. So one person isn't the only one that knows how to do something. You know, it's comfortable and it's less time to give it to the same person, but from a team, you know, professional growth, from a, you know, what if someone leaves perspective, we need to be cross-trained. So.
Great. Okay. Should we shift over to Aldo?
Sure. So as Brandi pointed out a lot of good things, and one thing that clicked with me is the customer service thing. We're definitely a customer service operation. We're basically like a help desk. And because we provide so many solutions and applications, we need to figure out how to best provide that service. Well, we've been growing so quickly. The county population has been growing so quickly the past 5 to 10 years that our team has struggled to keep up with expectations and roles and defined roles and responsibilities for other departments, the departments we're providing services for. Before, we were just providing maps and data, but as these roles grow and the duties grow, you know, we shift to something like for example, a QA/QC, a quality assurance, quality control operation for some of these data sets. And so when there's errors here and there, we figure out, you know, both us, GIS team, and the other department stop to think, okay, whose responsibility is it to figure out why this is wrong and how do we fix it? Is it GIS that goes out and fixes it, or is it that department that has not just the expertise but the responsibility for it? You know, who becomes liable for the quality of the data? And so that's been a growing pain. And I see Brandi smiling there, and I can see that she's experienced the same thing as well.
Today, we had a conversation about it today.
Yeah, it's a difficult conversation to have, because, you know, you don't want to throw, you know, you're not passing the buck, but we, you know, in some cases we feel like, hey, you're the ones that go and have these meetings, make these decisions. Just tell us what the outcome is, and we'll update the data, and that's how it should be. So the staff kind of stresses out when that happens, because stuff like that comes up brand new. We have never discussed it before, so we have to all go back to the drawing board, and it kind of falls into like the bureaucracy. Is what should we do about this? How do we fix it?
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations struggle with that. I know I've always struggled with that, especially when you're getting information out of a permit system or an ERP system that you don't have control over, but you're having to extract data out of there or connect to it and map it. And if things are wrong, you're going to get bad results. And then you try to go to the source to, hey, fix these addresses or fix this content, but they don't have the resources to do that. You know, then it starts becoming well, do we post-process this data, or, you know, how do we resolve this issue, which now it's time and resource to clean it up.
Yeah, for me, some of it was the people who came before me and were in this position, and they had different ideas about what they were going to do. And so I have to reset expectations with people outside of my department to say, you know, we don't do that. That's not actually part of our job. Or even in my department, I've kicked back a bunch of stuff. And you know, I find that a lot of times people don't want to say no. Whether they're just really nice, or they're, you know, think that they can accomplish more than they can. And I don't really do that. I try to be really honest with people to say, this isn't going to happen in this amount of time. I hear you. I know you need it. I can't do that, you know? Yeah, under promise, over deliver.
Now, I got a question from Jeff Garcia, Brandi. This is mainly perhaps for you. He asks, for the GIS folks that are not part of the IT department, how is the relationship between IT and access to server infrastructure for GIS handled? And then, Aldo, I think you can probably respond on the IT side how it's handled. But Brandi, why don't you go first?
Sure. So we have a really, really good relationship with our IT folks. We have two GIS developers. One is in my department and one is in infrastructure. And they have a certain amount of access to servers and databases that we all talked about and we all feel comfortable with. There are certainly things that I do not want my team responsible for. I don't even want us to have the password to have access to it. And I'm sure IT agrees with that because we don't do it, but we do have a certain level of flexibility, and that is not me. Has started before me, and I'm doing everything I can to keep up that great relationship. So.
Yeah, we've got a pretty similar relationship with IT. It kind of parallels what Brandi has going on. Because we're in IT, we're in the same building. If I've got a problem, you know, I can pick up the phone, or I can run down the hall and you know, put my head in their door and say, hey, my server's down. What can we do to fix it? And they're right on the ball. It's a great relationship. Also, it kind of, you know, you build that rapport. And one of the main things we do, or at least we strive to do, is they've got certain, you know, rules and expectations. This is the process. If, let's say, you want to build a new server, and we try to stick with it, you know, to build that rapport and that trust that, hey, we can depend on GIS to do it the right way. And so whenever we can, you know, go off and you know, call an audible on something, the IT services can be pretty flexible with us on that.
That's great.
Cool.
All right, let's transition into now your top 3 successes. Let's go ahead and start with Aldo. Aldo, I answered this question before, and is there 1 or 2 things on this list that you'd like to elaborate on?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, all these kind of tie together. You know, once we start showing what GIS can do other than just being maps, you know, once we can show them that, hey, we can build these applications for you to make your life a little bit easier. All you have to do is give us the data. We'll host it for you securely, and then all you have to do is edit it using this nifty application. Once we're able to show them something rather than explain it to them, then we built that trust with them that, hey, you need more resources to be able to handle this part of whatever it is you're working on. In this case, it could be the West Nile and the Zika surveillance program. And we were able to, because we were added that workload onto ourselves, because, hey, we said, hey, we can do this for you. They said, okay, then do it for us. Well, it became too much. So we asked them, hey, we need help with this. And they were happy to give us a contract labor to use GIS on a daily basis, integrated into their day-to-day process, and use the products, not just the web app to input data, but the final products to display out public maps and public information.
Great. All right, let's move over to Brandi. I consolidated a few of your bullet points, Brandi, but is there 1 or 2 things that you'd like to call out on?
I would say that I'm going to brag about my team and say we won Team of the Year for City Development last year. That may seem not that interesting to a lot of technical people watching this. However, that was a really big deal for my team. They said, we've never been nominated. We've never been considered for any award whatsoever. Nobody cares about what we do here. All they care about is the building permits. And, you know, anyone who's worked in city development can absolutely relate to that. And our leadership, you know, said, wow, what you guys have done in this past year is really, really, really commendable. And, you know, part of it is related to the other 2 bullets, which is getting out there more, selling what we do, telling, like communicating. And that was my big focus for my first year here. So that was just really, really, really cool. And now we have more respect and we have more credibility when we do talk to someone about projects they want. So that was the best.
Hey, Brandi, you talk about communicating, and I know that that's kind of a crux in a lot of GIS managers. What kind of tactics did you use for communicating?
Kind of answering your question, but I'm going to answer a different question.
Okay.
But I'll answer yours too. I'm no longer the most technical person on my team. That's really hard for GIS managers.
Oh. All right, let's close the show.
Really hard.
Hey, it gets a whole lot easier with age, right?
And I say that because I am no longer the one sitting behind a computer figuring out X, Y, and Z, pain in the butt tech stuff, right? I have someone, I pay someone to do that. I have time, and I prioritize my time into the communication. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. People say they don't have time, and my point is, it is your job, and it is what you should be prioritizing your time to be. So I email, I go to meetings, I write blogs that are just internal for the city. It's all about what Aldo said, make something and show them. People need to see what you're talking about because they just don't get it the way you do, and they shouldn't. There's no reason why they should. So I spend a significant amount of my time communicating, and it's different, and you know, you kind of got to just get out there. Now I actually have people come into the basement. You know, we joked for the first, year and a half, no one really visited me. Now I actually have people come into my door. They're scared. They scare me. But I walk up the stairs and I go talk to people. And I don't wait for them because they are not going to ask me to come, but they want me to come there.
Well, I think that's a great accomplishment to be recognized by your city. And I'm gonna guess that a big part of that recognition was really the idea behind GIS as being a catalyst for operational improvement. In other words, how you help other city functions work better.
Yep.
And that's a pretty important distinction, that it really focuses on the results of what you produce, not what you produce, the maps, the data, the things that people blindly perceive GIS to be. So this is an important distinction. And you brought up another factor that I think is worth calling out, and that is the important transition in any individual's life as they move from the technical lead for an organization to become a management lead, and therefore you move from a technician to a salesperson. I hope I don't simplify this transition, but having been received sales training at one point in my life, I can appreciate that all managers have something to sell, the benefit for why they do this work, and the results that could be generated is a sales process. And so with that, we'll kind of go on to our next question. I'm going to turn this one over to Toby to ask, and I will try to dictate a few things.
So we just talked about, the successes that you've had with your program, and, a lot of the successes start to create a lot of momentum within your organization. And have you noticed like any leadership awareness or changes in the GIS perception? I know, Brandi, you just said, people stop you, because now they know more about GIS. But, have you noticed anything from the executives, talking about GIS more, or like you said, expecting you to be at now meetings, or is it coming up now more in city council? Is it, having this momentum creating effect? If you guys can elaborate on any of that.
If you make a story map, just know that you're going to make more. People love them. People love them. And this is about communicating to non-technical people in most instances. So from a city development point of view, we are constantly trying to engage people in the planning process and our comp plans and all of those things. So story maps are amazing for that. And so just know, if you open that door, you better be ready to have that door open. And it's a lot of work.
Yeah. So you were mentioning, like, just kind of, if you can add this to your bullet points here, Wade, is, people now are expecting GIS to show up at certain meetings, I'm sure. And then,
oh yeah, absolutely.
And I know that you can have death by meeting. I used to spend probably 50% of my time just in meeting, even if there's only a little element of GIS to the meeting, or maybe even not. there is now this expectation that GIS needs to be involved because it is a business system.
What about you, Aldo?
Well, I wanted to add on to what Wade was saying about, GIS being a sales thing, and you had sales training, and I, sold appliances back when I was in college. And yeah, it's kind of that, I feel like a pharmaceutical rep. Sometimes I'll drop into a department and see how things are going there, because maybe they won't pick up the phone to tell me if something's wrong with their application, and then they'll open up to me hey, I wish you could do this, I wish you could do that. So kind of this traveling salesman of how are things going over there. And as far as leadership awareness, I think the biggest boon we've had was increase in budget, because they trust that what we're doing is increasing efficiency around the board. Whether it's improving a current service that we have, or going out and getting a new service. And one thing that we like to do is that we like to use the hours. Let's say it's going to cost us 20 hours of time, or 80 or 120 hours of time to complete this task. If we were to buy this service, it would cut that time down by 80 or something hours. And we use the salary plus benefit cost that it would take, and compare that cost versus the cost of the software piece, or maybe we were outsourcing the service, and say it would save us this amount of dollars. And one of our executives here told me that little secret in when writing budget proposals. I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And the number of budget proposals that have gone through has gone up over time because of that.
Hey, I've got a question from Michael Green this might be the right spot to put it. Is the challenge of adopting technology a challenge? Have you noticed that with working with your other departments, trying to gain more budget? Is there a challenge with adopting new technology, or this type of technology?
Definitely. And it always depends on the end user. There are some that can adopt it pretty well, run with it. They're good to go, because it's a pretty basic level of an implementation of some sort. As these pieces become more complicated and they're required to bring in more departments here and there, the end user becomes a little bit more anxious about what they're seeing, what they expect before they even see some kind of product. And if you're doing the agile approach, and I know Tim might want to talk a little bit about this, is that makes it a little bit easier. Hey, look at this product, see what you can do with it. And sometimes we can't do that. And that might take us, 3 or 4 weeks before we can deliver a product and say, hey, test this out. And so as the anxiety increases, the level of adoption can decrease.
My answer is completely opposite. Technologically, easy, people get it. It is all about change. It's all about perceived, hardship. I would say it's harder to change someone's process than it is to ask them to use a new tool. The tools we're giving them are very, very basic, whether it's collector or survey or web app. So it's a mind frame. It's a culture.
All right, thank you, Brandi.
Okay. Great. Okay. Now I kind of wanted to focus on the idea of growing GIS capacity. And so we asked this question of each entity in order to better appreciate how they are approaching this challenge of always either getting more acceptance of GIS or increasing awareness, buy-in, that type of thing. Let's see who we're going to start with. We're going to start with Brandi. These are her answers. We won't have time to go over all of them, but Brandi, are there a few on this list that you'd like to expand on?
Sure, I would say, and I think I've talked about this already, but it is all about growing talent within your team. It's all about team building. You have to bring people along with you as the manager. You cannot go alone. My philosophy is to provide services to customers before they ask for them. Before they even know that they're going to ask for them. So that's part of that communication. That's part of the knowing the business, really being a part of the larger department. If I
can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, when I got to Thornton, we did not have the ability to map our building permits. Or let me rephrase: we were not mapping our building permits. And I've been doing this a long time, so I thought, why in the heck are we not doing that? That is a complete opportunity. Well, no one's asking for it. Perfect, because now we can take our time. So now we have an application. It maps all the permit types. It tells us CO dates, so people can just select spatially. So our policy planners who are doing forecasting can use it. I mean, our building inspectors just think it's absolutely amazing that they can look at it. And a lot of the monthly reports that our plans examiners have to submit, you know, for metrics for the month, they can do just with a couple of clicks of a button now using our application. Nobody asked for that. And then, yeah, as Aldo was saying, track what you're doing, you know, who's doing what are they working on, those kind of things. And you know, I provide metrics monthly to my boss about what's going on. And I don't just provide him, you know, here's the numbers for the type of work we're working on. I include a blurb. Here are the trends that I'm seeing. Here's, you know, the difference from last month. Here's, you know, what we're working on, and kind of explain to him what he's looking at, because he doesn't have time to, you know, do that for everyone in his department. So.
Hey, Brandi, you mentioned something. You mentioned metrics. That's always kind of tough for some of the GIS folks that I've talked to. Could you share any of those with us? Maybe you know, after this event on the, you know, maybe Toby can post it.
Sure,
I think others would be very interested to see examples of GIS metrics and how other folks might be able to use it.
Yeah, I'll give you one of my monthly reports so you can see what I mean about how I write stuff to clarify on there.
Fantastic.
That'd be great. All right, here are Aldo's responses. And again, Aldo, don't have time to address all of them, but is there one or two you'd like to call out?
Sure. Well, first I want to say what Brandi said about growing talent, that's really important, you know, whether you want to focus on a specific niche or develop them all at the same time, your team. What we do here is we dedicate specific individuals to specific departments. Like this person's going to be the representative or the rep for emergency services. This one's going to be the rep for the planning department. And so by training them in that, they can communicate better to these end users. As we're growing, you know, we're growing so quickly that we've been having trouble keeping up, you know, like, as we said before, of expectations and responsibilities. So we've been working on GIS governance documents. Before we didn't have any, and now it's very important for us to, and it's evident that we need to start drafting this, not just saying, hey, you're in charge of this data, but also, hey, when you want us to change this data, for the most important documents like fire lines, police department lines, emergency services stuff, fill out this application, you know, attach any ordinances that you might have used for this, and then we will review this with our, you know, other department, for example, our sheriff's office or dispatching team, to see if we can accept these changes. We're not to that point yet, but it's becoming more and more evident that we need that.
Great. Okay, so our next question has to do with something that was mentioned a little bit, I think, for both, and that is the strategic plan. So I'll turn this over to Toby to ask.
Yeah, I was wondering, do either of you guys have a GIS strategic plan at all? And no? Okay.
We do. We've got a 5-year strategic plan draft. It hasn't been officially implemented into the department.
Now, is that a GIS strategic plan or is it an IT strategic plan?
We have a GIS strategic plan independent from the overall IT strategic plan.
Okay. Okay. So it's not all wrapped up into the IT strategic plan then. It is separate.
Correct.
Very good. And is that aligned with your organization's vision or mission?
Yeah, so we have a set mission statement, vision, values, and we use that as a guide to how we, you know, drafted the language of it and how we were going to, you know, execute some of these goals.
Yeah. And then were there any KPIs or metrics performance metrics generated out of that?
A handful, yes. I can't come up with them on the top of my head.
No,
but,
that's
but
fine.
as we drafted it, we thought about, okay, what are the things we're looking for to determine what success looks like?
Yeah. Yeah. How often do you guys look at that? Do you look at those metrics quarterly, monthly?
Those metrics we look at monthly.
You do look at it monthly.
In fact, we've got, we use smart sheets here, and we create a dashboard with that. And we put them, we've got a big old 70-inch screen TV that has the metrics on at all times, so people can see what we've been doing this past month. And there's also links to current projects that if somebody is thinking, oh, I'm missing something, they go to that board, they check out current projects, and they use that for information.
Oh, that's cool. That's a nice reminder.
Yeah.
As you're walking by, oh shoot, I forgot about that.
I didn't want to make it seem like a big brother thing, like don't forget to do your tasks. But so far it's working well.
Awesome. So Brandi, is there like any future of a GIS strategic plan? Is that like on your radar at all?
I mean, yes and no. My organization doesn't value them, is the really direct answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a vision. I don't have a adopted strategic plan because my city doesn't do that. I do have a plan. I do know what the values are of my city. I do know what the goals are of the city manager. I do know what my department goals are. And so I can categorize the things that I do, into those buckets. Mm-hmm. And I probably do that better than some of the other divisions do, because we are supporting them. So we automatically fall in there in certain respects. So yeah, it's not formal, but I do think about those things. It's a part of my madness for planning.
Yeah. And how do you communicate that to your staff?
Oh, well, we have weekly one-on-ones. So I can talk to them about, you're working on this project and this is what it's for. And I kind of go into the higher level part of it. I don't believe that my employees should just do this technical thing and don't ask questions. It's not how I manage. And then we also have every 2 weeks, we have a staff meeting for all of us, meeting. And so that's when I'm able to kind of talk about, this is what I heard from SLT. These are the priorities. These are the things they're talking about, what they're caring about. And so that's always something I do talk about. Sometimes my employees are like, why are you telling us this? And I tell them, you need to know what the city cares about, what council and what the city manager care about. It's what we care about.
Right.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Cool. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that.
Well, guys, this is actually the last slide. So this is kind of how we ended our pre-webinar questions. I didn't think we necessarily had time for all of them, so some of them have been cut out, but I think we're just about on time. I'll turn it back over to Toby. Kind of just put up, I can go ahead and stop sharing my screen if you think it's ready. And I would say that I think I'd be happy to share this PowerPoint with inside of our Slack channel. And so I'll go ahead and post that on the GIS webinar series forum so that everybody can kind of have this as a reference document. This, of course, this webinar is being recorded, so you can get the audio and the live interaction. But if you also valued their responses and what we jotted down dynamically, I'll post this today.
Yeah.
I'll turn it back over to you, Toby.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I mean, this was a different format, a different way of conversing and looking at the information and trying to get different perspectives. And I liked it. It was good. I enjoyed it. It really kind of give a contrast to the way things are done. And thank you again, Wade, for putting that together. I know that took some time.
Well, thank you, Brandi. Thank you, Aldo, for volunteering. We sure appreciate you guys providing us with this opportunity to better examine your operations, your challenges. And we just know that success comes in all different flavors. And there's nuances to how that success is delivered. And by you sharing, provides everybody more information about the nuances that you have experienced. And I'm sure it planted seeds today. And that's really our goal here, is to cover topics of interest and hear from different perspectives so others can try and elevate the standing of GIS within their own organizations. And I think your successes that you chose to share, the challenges that you have identified, are probably all relatable. And I sure appreciate the insight and your time. I think it's great.
Hey, Tim, do you have any last words?
No, I got happy holidays, happy New Year. Can't wait to see everybody next year and get this thing rolling again.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Aldo. Thank you, Brandi. Appreciate it. Lots of love to you guys. As a reminder, come join GISSuccessNetwork.com. Let's join us up on the masterclass on the permission level, step 2 of 5. And so that's November 20th, 11 a.m. Pacific time, if you want to catch the live webinar of that. And obviously will be recorded and put into our library. So come join us if you can. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. And the replay will be available hopefully early next week. And I really want everyone to have a very safe and wonderful holiday. Spend time with your family as much as possible. And I hope to come back in January just fully recharged and ready to give out some more great content and have some great webinars and some great discussions with everybody. Feel free to contact us. We're on LinkedIn. We're on our Slack channel. Even though I'll be doing a digital detox, I still will be quasi online, and I will be supporting our members in the GISSuccessNetwork.com as well. So anyways.
So Toby, Robbie also had a question about if Brandi and Aldo were willing to provide their email addresses.
Oh, sure. Yeah. What is the best way to contact you guys?
I'll put it in the chat.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Or you can find me on LinkedIn.
Even better.
You can tweet at us at Denton County GIS. I thought I'd plug that in.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. And the post-processed video will have all these links, and the show notes will have it as well. So we will have all that information. Plus, it'll be in Slack as well. So there we have it, everybody. Have a wonderful time. Have a great day. And thank you for showing up. And we will catch you next year.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So long.